Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see such a great turnout. We had lots of registrants and excited to be sharing these results. We've been, as you'll hear in the presentations, we've been looking forward to getting this going and sharing out what the work has been accomplishing for quite some time now. So first thing I wanted to mention is just that a note that it will be recorded and materials can be shared for those who registered. And then if you wanted any additional follow-up information, you could find that on the World Education website. We'll also have some contact information for World Ed staff at the end of the presentation on the slide. So we're happy to share and engage with anyone who's interested further. My name is Adam Turney. I'm the Vice President at World Education of the Africa portfolio based in our headquarters in Boston in the US. If we want to go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So first, I think just very quickly, we're going to go over the program that we can expect to hear about today. Some of you may be internal to the JSI and World Education community. Some of you may be hearing about us for the first time, so we thought it would be a good idea to start with just a very brief overview of us as an organization and as a team who's present with us here today. So World Education has been supporting education systems, a very wide range of programming, formal and non-formal in Ghana since 2001. So obviously this work is very close to our hearts, and we have lots of excellent staff in Ghana who've been working that, moving that work forward. So in line with what you'll hear today, and lots of the details and results, we collaborate closely with the Ministry of Education and the Ghana Education Service, and we're lucky to have someone from GES here today, as well as many others, as we help to build the capacity of local partners focusing on gender equity, strengthening the education system, keeping children in school. I would just plug again that we have a website that outlines lots of the work that we've done in these areas, because as we've been there for so long, we're really proud of the range of work that we've been able to do in the education sector in Ghana. And just one last detail, this mention of John Snow Inc., JSI, Research and Training, is because as of this year, we are proudly integrated as a division within JSI, which bolsters our expertise around the world, but also specifically in Ghana, where JSI has been supporting the public health initiatives that they work on since the 80s. So as you can see, Ghana is a special place for all of us. Just as a matter of housekeeping, what we'll be going through with the Ghana Read-Along pilot implementation, which is what we're here to hear about today. We'll go over the project design, the pilot itself, the impact evaluation, which produced the results that you'll be hearing about today. And we will also have question and answer time at the end. So just a note to put your comments and questions in the chat throughout. Another really important aspect that we wanted to highlight here in relation to this work is just our funding acknowledgement. So this is an internally funded initiative, and it's relevant, I guess, to the work across the board that we do. So in 2022, the Library of Congress awarded us the Literacy Award, and we were recognized for that due to our commitment to literacy globally. That includes our domestic work as well as work in Africa and Asia. And so it's a great use of those funds to move that work forward. So we're very proud of that and grateful to the Library of Congress for that acknowledgement. And also it was complemented by some donations from World Education's board members, which we're obviously very grateful for because I think everyone sees value in this work. So without further ado, I think we can move to the panelists. So next slide, please. So if I leave anything out here with introductions, feel free to elaborate more when it's your turn to speak. But I just wanted to highlight our main panelist today. So Stephen Conde, he's an education expert who worked with World Ed on the FCDO-funded STAGE project, which you'll hear a bit about today, and has continued on with World Ed in Ghana supporting the Read Along pilot. So obviously he's a key player in what you'll hear about today. Willem van de Wal also, our senior tech advisor. He's got more than 20 years of experience focusing on early grade reading, teacher professional development, community-based education. Willem's been with World Ed for a number of years and has worked across many of our portfolios, including Cambodia, Mozambique, Ghana, and others. Anshal Bindal, this is the program manager at Google, which we're really excited to have today with us. She's been instrumental in our communications with Google throughout the pilot and continues to support the strategy and implementation of our use of the Read Along app. So she'll be sharing some key insights from their work and thoughts on the Read Along app itself. And then also Abu Qasim, who, as I mentioned before, is a key collaborator for World Ed in Ghana. He's the deputy director at the Ghana Education Service and focuses on public relations and training. And they are, of course, Abu and his team are the main stakeholders and advocates for the Read Along work in Ghana. So with that, I will pass it over to Willem, who can get us going on what we're sharing today.
Thanks, Adam. Let me give you the context in which this Read Along pilot took place. World Education has implemented the Strategic Approaches to Girls' Education project. This was an FCDO-funded project, one within the Girls' Education Challenge funding windows. And we worked to identify out-of-school girls between 10 and 19 years in the districts. You'll see that here on the image in red, which is around half of the country. The older girls went through a vocational skills training, and 90% of them successfully started income generation activities. But today we're going to talk about the other 8,000 something girls. Those were girls between 10 and 14-year-old. In accordance with the Ghana Complementary Basic Education Policy, or CBE, we organized an accelerated learning program of about 9 months, in which we taught them foundational literacy and numeracy skills. I think we were successful. Of that initial group, more than 95% transitioned to formal education in 2019. And after 2 years, around 90% of these girls are still in school. We supported transition to primary and secondary school, depending on their skills at the end of the ALP. And more than 60% of these girls actually transitioned to grade 4 or higher. Next slide. Now, this is where the challenge lies. The CBE program, this Complementary Basic Education program, is a local language program. Stage work with 9 different local languages. Teaching and learning materials in literacy and numeracy was in local language, and a community-based facilitator leading the ALP also spoke the local language in the community. True, we organized a 2-month English language course during the ALP because we knew that this might become a challenge based on prior programming. But this was focused on oral language acquisition only, not really reading. So what we did is we followed the girls for 2 years after transition, and we did research on their learning and well-being. And overall, they were doing great. Many girls thrived and dropout was low. As I mentioned, 90% was still in school after 2 years. But at the same time, many girls reported that they didn't find themselves proficient enough in English. Because from grade 3 onwards, most topics are being taught in English. English becomes the language of instruction in Ghana in grade 4 and higher. There's also insufficient materials in schools to boost English language learning of children in general. So you'll understand the challenge here. There is a high probability that girls actually might drop out because they don't understand their teachers or they can't keep up with the English learning materials being used. And besides, not being able to speak English also complicates the integration of the girls in schools because they reported not feeling equal to their peers who'd been in school from grade 1 onwards. And another complication is that teachers in public schools are often from other areas in Ghana, unable to use the local language to support these children beyond English. Next slide. So we started looking for a solution to help those girls. From stage, we still had a large number of tablets that we used for monitoring and assessment. Those tablets could be repurposed. So we were looking for an educational technology solution, EdTech, because this could provide the support to children that teachers couldn't or didn't have the time for. It needed to be free, though, that resource, to ensure that this could be sustained against no cost. We thought the time was right to try out an edtech in this setting because of the increase in digital technology. There was a recent report recently published by the World Bank that shows that the share of the population that has an online presence actually rose from 8% in 2008 up to 69% in 2021. And of this group, almost 70% accesses internet via smartphones, particularly the youth. So these are all opportunities. And of course, there are gender gaps, geographical differences, but overall, these are promising signs. Another part of the solution needed to be the involvement of teachers, parents, caregivers, Ministry of Education, GES, Ghana Education Service, because they're the ones who could tell us if this actually works, this pilot we were intending to do. If this could be taken up if successful and ultimately prevent that English language proficiency gap, or at least when it's there, address it effectively. This is important because currently in Ghana, I don't know who from the chat who from the participants is in Ghana, but you know then that there are similar CBE programs currently ongoing. There's education outcome funds, there's programs from Luminous and others, and it's likely they'll run into similar issues as we did with our stage project. So if we could pilot something that could inform their programming, that would really be great. Next slide. So we did a landscape analysis and we looked at developing something ourselves first, but then we also looked at existing software such as Booksmart from World Reader. There's African Storybooks, there's other resources. And in the end, the preferred app was called Read Along. This is something developed by Google. And what really did it for us is the fact that it runs offline and that it's free. It has a voice recognition feature that is far beyond what we've seen elsewhere. So we contacted the Read Along team from Google in India to see if they were interested in working with us and using the app in Ghana and conducting research on the impact of it on the English language proficiency of girls. And luckily they were interested. And so I want to actually hand it over to Anshal from the Read Along team, who will speak more about the app itself.
Good day, everyone. My name is Anchal, and I'm a program manager at Google. Very excited about our pilot and the results here. To introduce Read Along is a speech-based app which basically helps students between K through 5 to read and fall in love with the idea of reading. I invite you to go and view our product on readalong.google. It's free for everyone to download. Next slide, please. So when Google decided that we wanted to invest and develop a product like Read Along, there were key principles for us that we had in mind. The first is we wanted to make sure that it could enable teachers, enable volunteers and facilitators, whether it be in a home or a school setting. So as you can see, Read Along right now, like Willem mentioned, is free of cost. Once you download it, you do not have to worry about internet connection at all. What you see to the left of your screen is a small character called Dia. She is our friendly reading assistant who basically helps students by listening to them in real time reading. She gives them feedback when they're doing a good job. Let's say as a student, I'm unable to read a certain word. I can click on her and get her assistant. She is also able to give us the meaning. Currently, Dia can facilitate such reading in 11 different languages. To the right of the screen, what you see is we have a library with over 1,000 content stories leveled from grade 1 to grade 4. They are spread across different categories like friends, one-time, animals, etc. As a student reads, as you see in the second picture, you're able to collect stars. We've seen that this motivates students to read and feel safe when they're doing so. Last, we've also packed it up with some activities that can help students build vocabulary and understanding of certain sounds, etc. Next slide, please. Currently, Read Along works offline completely. Once you download it, you have access to 1,000 books across different languages. We do not store any data at any child level. Like we often hear feedback saying, hey, how do I track students? We have a different metric which anonymizes data and makes the student completely safe. And last is it's completely free of charge. We conducted 2 impact studies before we launched it globally. We saw a 64% increase in reading level over 3 months through Asar, a major partner in India. We also saw that learners improved their fluency learning by 40% when we conducted an evaluation study with an independent partner. Next slide, please. This is a slide that makes my job and makes my work so much more meaningful. We have impacted over 34 million children globally. When Read Along first started, we were called Google Bolo, and it was primarily designed for India. When COVID came along, we decided that we would revamp and change our product features to make it available to students across the world. Currently, we're available across 11 languages in 180 countries. We're proud that there are 172 million plus stories that have been read completely, and studies and partnerships like the one we have with World Education helps us continue to prove the efficacy of the product. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to take any questions here. William?
Thanks, Anshal. I think for the questions, maybe we can write them in the chat for now, and then in the end, we'll try to respond to them live, or we can respond to them in the chat itself. So feel free to add it. Stephen Conde, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Stephen Conde. Thank you for participating. And so we started the process, the concept note, through the implementation from January and ended in November. Next slide, please. And so we had discussion and developed a research design from January with GES, and we did undertake a qualitative study focused on impact and how the app can influence the reading and improve the efficiency of the English language efficiency of girls who participate in the program. We use the early grade reading assessment, EGRA, to do a baseline. As you can see, one of the girls in the picture undergoing going through the exercise. So this actually helped us to understand the levels of the girls, and moving forward, we're able to ascertain how they have been able to move from the baseline to improve upon their reading skills. So we shared this with Ghana Education Service, and we received approval, which gave us the chance to move into the schools and the communities to conduct the program. Next slide, please. So we identified the communities, and we actually went around a lot of the schools to identify how many of the girls were still in school and how many will avail themselves for the pilot. And so we're able to identify 3 treatment schools and 4 control schools. That gave us about 118 of the girls. And so we selected the girls based on the fact that some of them are foster children, some of them had earlier on dropped out, some of them had never been to school before. Before they went, they joined the stage project. So that, having done that, we trained the teacher mentors. The head teachers too were also part, and that took us into the communities where we're able to get the consent of the parent. Parent actually moved into the schools to sign the consent form. That gave us the child the right to be able to take pictures of the girls, record them, and share for other people to see the effect of the project. So we also told them that the project was a 3-month project, and it was going to give the girls opportunity to be able to read and be able to understand what they read in English language. Next slide, please. Now, so this is a training section that we brought together the head teachers. The picture you are seeing, the male is the head teacher of a school. The lady on the other file listing is the teacher mentor. We identify teacher mentors based on the stage project concept that we developed, where we identify mentor teachers to support the girls to be able to improve upon their learnings in the school. So when we're going to do this, we felt that to make it a smaller number, we added more of teacher mentors to be able to support the girls. So in some schools, we had 3, in another school 3, in another school we had 2. The head teachers too were also 4 head teachers who were very instrumental in the process. So we installed the app, downloaded the stories. In fact, we downloaded over 40 stories per tablet to be able to let the girls read based on their reading levels. And so that helped the girls to have various stories to read within 15 minutes per day. And usually we use the break period. Some schools did it from 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock, whilst other days from 10 o'clock to 10:15. So within that period, when the girls are on break, they are able to go for the section. We also made sure that there was safeguarding protocols duly observed. We also ensured that we distributed tablets, 1 tablet per child, had the chargers, gave them chargers, had a safe place for the teachers, head teachers to store the tablet and be able to charge. And to get that, we're fortunate that the schools we selected had electricity. And so that every day the head teachers would charge them in their offices so that when it is time, they pick this, they give it to the teacher mentors to be able to use in the schools. So we also made sure that we had provided some stipend for electricity and for data for the teachers and head teachers to be able to use the app to do effective work for us. Next slide, please. Now, during the baseline, we use the AGRA as used by FHI 360 for the Ghana Learning project that they implemented. We had oral vocabulary that gave pictures to the girls for them to identify. And it will amaze you that girls in basic 5, basic 6 will see banana and they cannot mention it in English language, and then they will see kudu. They will see trousers and they were not able to do that. But within the process, after 2-3 months, we realized that there has been a tremendous improvement. So we look at letter sound, non-words, connected text, reading and listening comprehension as baseline. So you see the deputy director in charge of training is in the picture, and he was also part of the team that undertook the exercise, and he's with one of the girls in the picture. So the exercise we started in May 2nd and ended 12th of May, where we did the baseline in the treatment and control schools. Next slide, please. So after we had done the pilot and we had done the baseline, trained the teachers, we started monitoring every 2 weeks, bi-weekly. So I would go to the school, I'll be there before the learners would come. We would monitor the process, find out whether the tablets were working, whether the sitting arrangement was okay for the teacher to be able to supervise and provide support. And the tablets that had challenges were able to go back to fix them and the rest. So we saw that the bi-weekly monitoring actually motivated the teachers and the learners to be able to do the work effectively, and also created awareness among the key stakeholders in the district involving Ghana Education Service. We also did a live coverage by Ghana Television, where we went to schools and they carried the day activity from one of the communities, and a lot of people asked questions around that, and it was explained to them how the tablets were improving the reading skills of the girls. In some of the schools too, we had parents and teachers downloading, teachers who were not part of the program, also downloading the stories for their learners to use. And they actually speak that it actually helped their learners to know how to read. We also had parents coming into the schools with their smartphones for the head teachers to download the stories for them, because the girls were not carrying the tablet home. So when they go home, they will have access to the tablets of their parents to read. And that actually helped this category of girls to improve upon their reading. Next slide, please. And so we had an endline of the project from 21st to 31st of September. And so if you want the endline report, you can read it from the site as shared by Adam on the chat. Now, this is what some qualitative this thing that we picked from the girls. One of the girls testified that before we started, she was unable to read. Since we started using the tablet to learn, I have realized that I can now read, spell, and pronounce words. In fact, after every story, there is a game that the girls will play, and it actually helps you to spell some of the key words that were in the story. And this girl says that as a result of that, she's now able to read, spell, and pronounce some of the words that she couldn't also pronounce. I know certain English words, especially names of animals and food. When I go to the market, I know the English name for most of the items I buy. In fact, for example, kodu is the Dagbani word for banana, and most of the girls would, during the baseline, could not say banana, but they will tell you in the local language that kodu. And the example that this girl has given testified that after some few months of the project, she now goes to the market and she can say that I want to buy banana, I want to buy plantain, I want to buy yam, and etc. So that's a good story that we have from one of the girls in the community. Next slide, please. The monitoring process. In fact, we had the district director of education actually leading the monitoring process with his deputies, the school improvement supervisors, of the CISOs, school support improvement officers, and the head teachers were very instrumental in the monitoring process of it. It started with enthusiasm, with a lot of the girls coming very early initially because of the tablet that they had. It was very, it brought a lot of attention to the school, and then made a lot of the girls to be present, to be regular in school. The bi-weekly assessment that I undertook also showed that after 2 weeks of it, when we went back using the oral vocabulary, we realized that a lot of the girls had picked up. And then at the end of it all, we will see when my colleague Williams presents the data that indeed the process has been very, very successful, and it has actually helped a lot of the girls to improve upon their reading skills. The app actually recognized the speech to text, as he said. So if somebody said come, which is if the person wanted to say come and cannot pronounce the word come and say come, which is water in Dagbani, the app is able to pronounce it well to say that come, and then the learner will repeat after the app. And this actually helped most of the learners who picked very fast, that some of them would even read without the assistance of the mentor teachers in the process. And in fact, interestingly, some of the girls emerged top in their classes. And there is this teacher in Basic 4 who said that any person who came first will be given a brown uniform. Unfortunately, we started the pilot during this period, and one of the girls emerged as the best student for the term and actually received that award for it. And the girl was very happy about that. And we had a comment from one of the girls who said, I think I've improved when it comes to reading. However, speaking English and understanding what I read is now my challenge. And so now what GES officials have taken upon themselves is to ensure that girls understand, they comprehend whatever they read, and then they are able to speak basic English language. Next, please. Yes, so we encountered some challenges as earlier on enumerated by William, but these were based on the read along challenges that we encountered. What we saw was that during the harvesting season, like groundnut period, we realized that all the guests were sent into nearby communities to go and harvest groundnuts, and this affected attendance. So what I did was to move into 4 communities of the treatment areas to engage the parents and the girls to be able for parents to allow them to come back to school. So you see one of the head teachers, I was taking the picture, so he was interacting with the parent and the girls. The 2 girls we are seeing in the picture, and that's their father. And he was talking to them, to the father, that the girls should be allowed to come back to school. And it is interesting to know that after this 1-week engagement that we did, the following week, we saw attendance move to about 100%, because in one of the schools, attendance had dropped to 11 girls out of 30 were now coming to school. And the following week, we saw almost all the girls back to school. Some learners also had visual learning disabilities. And actually, we did our best to get the district disability and inclusion officer. Unfortunately, he had also resigned from GES and had moved to Accra, even though he tried to help us online, but it not actually improve upon the reading skills of the girls. So GES has taken upon themselves to make sure that now that we have identified this category of girls in the school with learning disabilities, they will help them to pick up. Then the attitude of parents, like I said earlier, we realize that you go to a school and all the girls are sent to farm for harvesting of granite. And unfortunately, most of them, when they return, their parents had taken over whatever that they got from the school, from harvesting, and they had lost learning hours, and also they do not have access to the money that they brought. The parents now have access to that and we use it to buy whatever that they want. And that is what GES2 has again taken upon themselves to engage parents extensively through the assembly, the assemblyman, and the local chief, the community chief, to make sure that parents, the assembly is looking for resources to pass bylaws that will be binding parents to ensure that their wards are in school instead of sending them to farm.
The program, as it age supported us be able to increase the number of learners in our schools. And through the monitoring, the regular monitoring of our learners, we realized that there were challenges that these learners were facing. And because of that, these learners were seen to have serious challenges in the English language. So support that we had was able to give these learners the opportunity to read. Some of the challenges that we saw in our monitoring was seen to be one of the serious things, and then EGRA assessment gave us that opportunity to be able to understand that these learners have challenges. We were much involved in the assessment at the baseline and then at the end line. Identifying the learners and seeing their problems was our major challenge. And then we conducted monitoring with World Education Incorporated. And then we saw that attendance had improved. The timetable was being followed. But we saw their attendance as it was being improved. We were looking at absenteeism because we thought that the learners were having challenge in reading. Whether the tablets were also working was seen to be a challenge. And so we saw that during our monitoring, we saw that it was the tablets were working. 15 minutes was used for the learners to engage them during break and not during the normal teaching hours. They also realized that it was reflected with us that some of the learners and their teachers, as well as the head teacher and the teacher mentors, were seen to have some amount of engagement and regular engagement with the learners, and the learners did not want to absent themselves from school once. And also, we saw that it was giving the learners this the opportunity to identify some of the texts that they were using. And when they pronounced the words wrongly, the app was able to support the learners to be able to pronounce the words and also identify the words as they were. Also, the sounds of the letters. This, we realized, was something that was very encouraging. Also, we realized that it increased the learner's ability to read within a very short time. This, we saw, it was something that was very, very strange. And the picture you saw indicated that we were at the training session. And that was when we were supporting the learners to be able to, the teachers to be able to get out there, support the learners. So increase in supervision was done. We realized it with the head teachers and that of the second supervisors, the school improvement support officers, and we realized that it had increased because we saw that the district director of education had to go to some of those of the schools that were engaged in this program. And then also the second supervisors intensified their supervision. It's improve attendance of learners and teachers. It was also interesting to note.
Great, thanks. Well, let's go to the next slide, please. Next one. Yeah. So as my colleague Stephen Conde mentioned, so we've conducted a baseline, endline, ECRA assessment to measure the impact of the use of the Read Along app on the English language proficiency of the girls. We looked at fluency, comprehension, vocabulary knowledge. You got 2 photos here of GES colleagues working with us to do the actual assessment. Next slide. It's set up quite simple, actually. 2 groups of students from grade 4 to 6. One group of students was what we call the treatment group in treatment schools, which is where the intervention took place. Girls were reading 15 minutes a day using the Read Along app. And then in the control schools, we also selected girls with similar characteristics. They needed to have transitioned from stage to a public school, needed to be in the same grades, 4 to 6, same geographical area, same mother tongue. Between the baseline and the end line, there was some dropout. In the treatment schools, for example, we had an initial number of 63 girls at the baseline, and after 3 months, 54 of them were present for the end line. Not to say they dropped out completely, but they weren't there during the end line. The control schools, it went from 55 to 45 students from baseline to end line. Important to note, we assessed the same students at the end line and the baseline. So we actually measured their individual improvement. Of course, there are limitations. It's a small scope. We realized that the intervention was designed as a pilot to establish proof of impact. We work with a typical group of girls, former stage girls, who underwent the quality CBE program. We'll share the full impact report with anyone interested, as mentioned in the chat, if you want to learn more about the methodology, the sampling, the tool itself, the data collection. There's no time to go into all of that now. So I want to show you some high-level impact. Next slide. Here are the results from the oral vocabulary subtasks. Students were asked to name 8 objects shown on a student sheet in English. Student orientation, by the way, was given in Dagbani, the local language, but of course they needed to answer correctly in English. On the left side, you see the control schools, the grade 4, 5, and 6. On the right side, you see the treatment schools, also divided per grade. You'll see that both cohorts improved, but the treatment group started with an overall lowest score. Look at the gray column. The gray column is the baseline score. So in grade 4, for example, in the control schools, the baseline was 3.1, meaning children were able to name correctly 3.1 objects of the total of 8 at the baseline. This is an average of all the girls within that grade 4, 3.1 words correctly. Then at the end line, it went up to 5.6 objects named correctly. What we see is that in all the grades, children in the treatment schools ended up being able to name more objects. In grade 5 and 6, they were on average able to name 7 out of 8 objects. What we also saw is that the number of 100% scores increased a lot. Initially at the baseline, there were only 3 students able to name all the 8 objects, but that went up to 42 students at the end line, 30 of them being in the treatment schools. So these are some promising results. Next one. Now let's look at letter recognition. Children were given a sheet with 100 letters and they were asked to read out the sound of the letter, as many as they could within 1 minute. Here too, children in control schools had a higher score at the baseline. on average read in almost 37 correct letters per minute at baseline. It's a little atypical distribution, by the way, because children in grade 4, 5, and 6 were reading the average, well, a similar number of letters, 37, but that was the way it was. Whilst they do progress over 3 months in the control schools, the increase was 33% against the baseline. Now, students in the treatment schools, as you can see, they were able to read many more letters than at the baseline in all the grades. All grades had comparable learning gains, about 2 to 2.5 times more letters read at the end line. Next one. Now, this is where it gets interesting, well, for me at least, because non-word reading is an exercise in which we assess the decoding skills of the students, right? They were given a sheet with 50 nonsense words, basically words that don't mean anything, like bear or tune or simple words. And it really assesses whether they're able to sound out the letters and blend them together in words. And what you see in the data is also a gradual increase throughout the grades. Grade 4 scores at the baseline are lower than grade 5 and 6. And at the end line, many girls in grade 4 to 6 progressed well. But there's a difference here as well. In the control schools, on average, they were reading 7.7 words more correctly than at the baseline. Right, so at the end line, they were reading on average 7.7 more words correctly. But in the treatment group, they were reading on average 18 more words correctly at the end line compared to the baseline. So here too, there's quite a significant, quite a substantial difference. Next slide. Connected text reading, oral reading passage. It's an important subtask of the AGRA. Girls were given a story of in total 56 words. They were asked to read as far as they could within 1 minute. So you'll see that this has been difficult at the baseline. Only children in grade 6 were able to read more than 20 words correctly. Look at the grade column again in grade 6. It's a bit similar in the control and the treatment schools. But the other grades had fairly low scores. Now the endline assessment has quite promising results, quite honestly beyond what I've seen in other EGRAs and other literacy projects I've been involved in. Similar to non-word reading and letter recognition, there was indeed an improvement in control schools, which is great and makes sense because obviously they're being taught in those schools. But in the treatment schools, students far outperformed their peers. The increase in the number of words they read at the end line was dependent on the grade 2.5 to 6 times more than the increase that the students in the control schools had. You'll see the figures here going from, what is it, 9.6 words read correctly in a minute in grade 5, 9.6 in the treatment schools. After 3 months, on average, they were able to read 43 correct words per minute in a minute. So this is a really big increase. 23 girls read the whole text, of which 18 were from the treatment group. Now, the last slide I want to show you, the next one, is on reading comprehension. Based on the degree to which the girls could read the story in the previous subtask, they were asked questions to see if they understood what they read. Now, this means that not all the students were asked all 5 questions because some of them were only read up to 1 sentence. For example, in grade 5, they were reading on average 9.6 words, remember? Now, that's just 1 sentence. So in that case, they were asked only 1 question based on what they read. Reading comprehension, for those who are a bit familiar with it, is often the most complicated of the subtasks because you need a certain level of speed, reading speed and accuracy before you will be able to comprehend what you've read. So I think by now you do get the picture, right? Looking at the graph here, results in the treatment schools were higher at the end line, despite a generally lower baseline result. That said, it's still not high enough in our perception. The ultimate goal of any reading program, I'd say, is improved reading comprehension. And in the treatment schools, there was an increase going from almost 0 to 2.7 questions on average responded correctly out of the 5. That's a little more than half of the questions correct. Ideally, you want to get that higher as well. Next slide, please. So in summary, learning gains in the treatment schools, they were on average 250% to 350% higher than in the 250% to 350% higher than at baseline. Now that difference in the control schools varied, depending on the subtask, between 30 and 68%. So the increased learning gains in treatment schools are much, much higher. Fluency subtasks, reading of letter sound, non-words, connected text reading, all improved substantially. And as mentioned, reading comprehension should follow once fluency goes up. So there's definitely room for improvement there, so to say. The last slide I want to go to. So we've been assessing the data. We've been looking at the data, and we see a lot of promising, substantial impact in a very short period of time. In our recommendation, we should really consider scaling up the Read Along pilot program. This could mean expanding to additional schools, regions, grades. We're not only looking at Ghana here, we're looking also beyond Ghana. For example, we're already supporting a similar pilot being rolled out in India. And advocacy to find organizations, partners, colleagues willing to support us is done through, well, webinars like this, but also sharing research, going to conferences. We're going to be at the upcoming CIS conference in the US, presented at other conferences. Looking at the experience we've had, there's a few recommendations if we would be able to scale it up. One of them being, we need to collaborate more with the Ministry of Education and Ghana Education Services. We've done that, but we need to establish ourselves more within that system. With the Complementary Basic Education Agency in Ghana also, to really address these English language proficiency gaps which we see in CBE programs. But we need official endorsement and support from the ministry to make the intervention more known and sustainable. We can explore opportunities for public-private partnerships to secure additional resources, because yes, you do need a tablet or an Android device, could be a phone as well. And also to seek technical support. One thing, and I saw this in the chat actually, we need to explore involvement of parents. Excuse me, one second. I got a bit of a cold here. We need to explore involvement of parents and caregivers, because we've only done this now in schools in a controlled setting. This is why we did it. But as the Read Along app is free and available to all, the aforementioned scale-up could also include parental engagement. As we've seen in the data, many people already have Android devices, particularly in the urban areas, obviously, but there's potential there. The Read Along app is free, available. Download it if you like in the Google Store. And that's definitely an area we should be looking more into. And the last thing, and this is more programmatically looking at the software, we are interested also to work with partners such as Google to tailor this software and implement more to the local needs. It's been extremely useful, but there are always things that could be better. For example, using a Ghanaian voice, speaking instead of the current more Indian dialect, Indian pronunciation, I mean. We could also include exploring this more through teacher-guided interventions, involve more teachers in this. So there's lots of things that we could explore further. Now, this is all I have to say. I want to hand it back to Adam Turney.
Great, thanks, Willem, and thanks to all the presenters and as well as the participants. Lots of great chat going on here. I wanted to specifically shout out, which I think Willem just also mentioned, the mention or thoughts about involving parents and things like that. We also do intergenerational literacy work in other places, and so obviously that's also at front of our mind. And so I think once we expand this and move into other areas, that would also be a strong consideration, because as you said, there could be some lateral gains there in just encouraging that kind of participation. A few of the questions were addressed in the chat throughout the presentation. There's a few of them that may be simple to address, so I just wanted to throw them over to our panelists to address a few of them. One that may be relatively simple is there's a question about accessibility for getting the app. And Anshul, I don't know if you wanted to speak to that in ways that people can download, engage with the Read Along app more generally for their own initiatives, or just to play around with it. And then just to add on to that, because Anshul might also want to chime in on this one, but I welcome Stephen Conde also to speak about this, which is there's a question around what types of activities are included in the Google Read Along app. So is it just reading stories? Does it have exercises that work on alphabetic principles? Are they all specific to English, or are there variations within that? So maybe first the question about accessing the app itself, and then maybe moving on to talking about what kinds of activities are within the app. And we, of course, encourage people to download and play around with it, because it is really a great product.
Okay, so I can say that, let me answer before. Oh, okay. The activities is the reading and the game, where the learner is taken through a process of learning to spell some of the keywords in the story. So if we look at the story, there are about 1,000 stories, as already mentioned, and each of the story, there is opportunity for the learner to play a game, and this game is to test the ability of the learner to spell some of the keywords that were read in the story. So when the learner is able to do that, you get the learner is applauded through a gift by DIA. And so it also serves as a way of motivating the learner to keep reading the story and winning a gift by DIA. Thank you. Whether William would like to add something to it.
I can add one more thing. So along with the stories and the games, we also have 2 features that help learners. So one is comprehension questions. So for every few stories, we have completed a certain set of comprehension questions to test the learner on their ability to understand the story and the vocabulary. And the second feature that helps students is within the app itself, and the character helps break down certain words phonetically. Currently, we're available, like I said, in 11 languages, and our strength is currently in English, because that's where we see maximum learning happen. But we are looking to expand to more languages, so more on that soon.
So I'm seeing a question just popping up now, the use of the Read Along app for adults. Actually, I've been contacted by people in the US saying that this is an excellent tool also to use to support, for example, Mexican immigrants in learning English. And so there's definitely interest. I'd say overall, in my perception, that most of the stories that are currently in the Read Along app are more focused towards children, but that doesn't mean that they can't be used for more advanced readers or adults.
Yeah, there is some great suggestions in terms of the conferences that we could look to applying to with TESOL and some others. And I think those are very welcome suggestions. We attend a lot of these regularly through our other programming. And so we are currently, as this is kind of coming to a phase of results sharing, we are looking to be presenting this elsewhere. So noted on those 2 suggestions, and we'll keep our eyes peeled. So feel free to be in touch if you have other ideas too. You'll note on this slide that we have the contact information for Willem. Obviously, anyone involved in this panel can be reached through him. It's just an easier way to make one point of contact for discussing the pilot and the results. And as we said, I shared the link for the executive summary in the chat, but the full report will be available very soon. So we can send that out with the links to the people who registered for this, but it'll also be hosted on our website. I think there was another question about just getting involved. I think there's many different ways for people to get involved. We work all over the world. And so I think one of the things that we think our added value is to working with the Read Along app is really about the capacity building of teachers and working with policymakers to get this going and implemented. And so there's lots of different ways that that could be something we can collaborate on, as far as funding opportunities or partnerships in places where others are already working and may have interest in expanding this particular aspect of rolling out the app. And so I encourage you to be in touch if you find it to be interesting. How about the tablets? I don't know if we have an answer to that.
Ideally, yes. This is one of the reasons why we're presenting this now, because we need a continued support to be able to make this work.
Yeah, and hopefully scaling it up beyond the treatment and control where we worked just for this example. So thanks everyone for joining, and please be in touch with anything further, questions, comments, interesting collaborations. Have a great day.